Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
All right, welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm currently at PSConfEU with a very special interview with some people from Microsoft, getting it started with returning guest, Steven Bucher. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what do you do at Microsoft, for those who haven't met you yet?
So I am a product manager on the PowerShell and CLI team at Microsoft, but we wear a lot of hats at Microsoft. I've been kind of realizing that we have a lot of things under our belt as far as responsibilities. So I do a lot of things with the PowerShell 7, the core engine, a lot of PowerShell releases, telemetry, PS readline, a new product that we've released called AIShell, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. SSH, and we do a bunch of stuff with Arc, server management, a lot of things.
Yeah, I talk a lot about, the real power in PowerShells, when you can connect PowerShell to the, I borrowed this from someone else, but the ancillary technologies, PowerShell is the glue language that kind of ties all these things together. So it kind of makes sense. You have a lot of hats.
Yeah. I think being a platform team, we also kind of have to just have a lot of hats as far as, the different things and different partnerships that we're developing within Microsoft and outside of Microsoft. So it's very much a dynamic group that we have. So
yes.
It's really wonderful.
And you gave a state of the shell.
I did.
A couple days ago now.
I did.
Felt like yesterday.
2 days ago. Felt like this morning.
So what's the general, what's going on in PowerShell?
Sure. So yeah, the latest with PowerShell is we've been really focused on maturing PowerShell 7. It's been a product now. It's been out for, a number of years. And so it's been used by, billions and billions of people and billions of machines here. It's monthly, we have almost over 200 million machines using PowerShell and over 2 billion sessions a month, which is pretty crazy. And so we have to be very, very careful and very mindful. Lately, we've been really doing a high focus on security and fundamental improvements that we have on PowerShell. So it may not, see a lot of feature-facing or public-facing things that we've been working on, but we've been hard at work making sure a lot of the things that we've been doing have been doing in a more secure and reliable way. But we know we still have work to do.
Yeah, and I think the number of sessions, the amount of computers that are using it, blah, 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 is very good to hear because it kind of gives people some ammunition. Well, it's maybe not the best word, some fuel to take to work and to get more buy-in, and to hear that, sort of your end of things, the tool set behind it is kind of maturing is also quite reassuring. Now, with the PowerShell releases, I didn't know this, but there's a difference between odd and even releases. What is that difference?
So odd releases, so first of all, when we talk about odd releases,
we mean the number.
We mean the number. PowerShell 7 has the I guess it's the minor release. I always forget major, minor patch, 7.4.x. The 4 is what we're talking about when we talk about even or odd. So 7.5 was our latest release earlier this year. That is the latest stable release. So we refer to those as the stable releases for PowerShell. When we have even releases, those are most typically our long-term service releases or LTS releases. So those ones are supported for longer, and we have a much more high rigor of kind of the support lifecycle we have on those. There is a bit of an overlap. So previously, like 7.2 would be was an LTS, and then 7.4 came out, so there was a minor bit of overlap there, but once 7.2 goes out of support, 7.4 becomes the latest LTS there. But we have a number of patch releases throughout the year. Evens are long-term service, odds are more stable releases as well.
Awesome. Now, I've been talking to you like every single chance I see you on the hall. I'm like, hey, AIShell. And on the podcast, I typically, well, at least this year, I found a couple projects that I really like and I think have a lot to offer the community, and I'll kind of bang on that drum quite a bit. AIShell, I think, has reached that for me, where it's going to be the next one where really, if you're using PowerShell, you really should be using AIShell as well. I don't know of an alternative that's quite as nice if you're in the terminal writing. So it basically gives you like a little, you call it a sidecar experience. So it kind of like splits your terminal a little bit, and you have like an AI chat to the side. You can connect it to a whole bunch of different things, which I guess we can cover a little bit. But for me, it just really reduces the amount of times you need to leave the terminal to solve things. We always talk about, using Get Help and all those kind of things, which is incredibly important. Any excuse to not leave the terminal, to add more context so you don't need to like go somewhere else. So customizing your prompt and your profile, those are things that I'm a big fan of, especially as people try and adopt it more. But you showed me something which I didn't know. So you can ask it questions and get code, and you can like quickly move that code. I think Control DD will take whatever code it returns and put it in your terminal so you can run it. But there was also resolve error. What is resolve error?
Yeah. So, first of all, AIShell is kind of a interesting basic technology because it's a PowerShell module, but it's also an executable. So the PowerShell module has 3 commandlets. So it's pretty simple, where we have start-AIShell, we have invoke-AIShell, which allows you to call and send queries and commands to the sidecar if you don't want to be switching context too often. And then we have resolve-error. So resolve-error takes the last error object that occurred in your shell, so presumably the last PowerShell error you had, and then takes it and sends it to the AI provider you have selected, so you can get a bit more of a description, a bit more of a understanding of what went wrong, and it can reason over what's going on there and help you kind of resolve it, especially when error messages may be a little bit vague. And so we're trying to help bridge that gap, at least in some way, with some AI assistants and providers. So
yeah, because errors are scary. I think especially early on when you haven't maybe resolved as many, you don't really understand all the technologies that are at play. It can be confusing, and getting some insight and clarity and guidance on that without having to Google it and finding this thing or, looking it up some other way. Very helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful. You keep it right in your shell there. And we're doing a lot more improvements to kind of keep it in line, get more information and context so we can get more relevant information that you have in the shell much more easily and quickly.
So we're talking about there's different providers and models you can use, which I think if you're just messing around on your own, you can use whatever. But if you're going to try and actually get this implemented at work and do things like that, there's some other considerations. And I think the space has grown quite a bit in terms of how you can maybe secure your data and create your own custom things that your work is responsible for. Can you speak to some of the different providers, and maybe we'll talk about AI Foundry and CoPilot and Azure, things like that?
Absolutely. So for AIShell, we support a number of AI providers. We like to refer to them as OpenAI compatible providers because they're compatible with the OpenAI API schema, because we use a lot of the libraries that OpenAI provides. And so that includes, of course, OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, which is basically the same thing as AI Foundry. I'll talk about that a little later. It supports things like Grok, Ollama, Gemini, a couple other smaller like LLMs. I'm trying to think of other, DeepSeek, a few other the well-known LLM providers. So you can choose the ones that you'd like and configure it how you'd like. Where it gets really powerful is using your own deployment of a model with Azure OpenAI or AI Foundry, because you talked about data privacy and stuff where you may not know if it's another service or something. You may not know necessarily what they're doing with your data, if they're pre-training it on stuff. A lot of companies like we at Microsoft are very responsible with any data that we send to the AI for customer-facing products. But sometimes enterprises still need that rigorous security posturing and assurance that the data that they're sending to this AI is not going to be changed. And if it's proprietary data, they can feel safe asking it some proprietary knowledge and providing it some proprietary knowledge to help get that assistance. And so that's where Azure OpenAI or AI Foundry comes in, where you can actually basically create your own Azure deployment of OpenAI models like GPT-4, GPT-3, GPT-4o mini, et cetera, et cetera. It's got loads of different ones there. It's really awesome because it takes very little time to deploy a model, and then you can request quota, you can manage the quota, the rate limits, you can do content filtering, content blocking, a lot more management of things. And the other cool thing is it all works with RBAC roles and Entra IDs, so you can actually have everything within your Microsoft ecosystem in your account. So you can only access it if your Microsoft Entra ID has access to that. So it makes it easier. We do support Entra ID with AIShell, and so it makes it much safer where you don't have to include keys in any config file. You can just say auth type Entra, have your Entra ID logged in on your machine, or using Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell. There's a whole variety of different ways you can do it. You'll find that, and it'll be like you're good to go.
Wow.
So super easy and quick.
Wow. Yeah, I have not dabbled in that area yet, but I think it's something where organizations really need to be mindful of and start kind of understanding what's going on, the developments in the space, and start taking the steps to take advantage of these technologies, or else maybe your customers or your employees may just go rogue and do things on their own. So making that easy for them is huge. And it has been interesting to see the space grow a lot. I mean, there's definitely a lot of resources invested in it, but you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned it, but we mentioned it earlier, CoPilot in Azure.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so CoPilot in Azure is a free service provided by Azure. It is a free chat service that you can use within Azure to ask it questions about how to use Azure, how to generate queries, generate Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell commands, kind of a more grounded and more knowledgeable large language model that can help you reason over your Azure resources and help you accelerate your use of Azure and your understanding of it. And so what we've worked on a lot is making sure that the Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI commands that are provided by that tool are highly accurate and highly reliable. And so that's another work our team has done. But we have brought the CoPilot in Azure across all these different places that you touch Azure. So you'll get it in the Azure portal, you'll get it within AIShell, and you'll get it within VS Code and GitHub Copilot for Azure as well. So, kind of in the crawl, walk, run, if you're in the GUI, you can use it to help you get understanding with Azure. If you want to get started with CLI and stuff, it's there to help you getting started with CLI. And then if you really want to, get some more advanced scripts or complicated scripts out there, or even do other things like generate IAC, infrastructure as code commands and stuff like that, it's really powerful with GitHub Copilot for Azure in VS Code. And that's just an extension. So you can search up GitHub Copilot for Azure and you'll find it. It requires GitHub Copilot, so you get both that knowledge of GitHub Copilot for general coding things, but you get supplemented a lot of the Azure knowledge so that it is more grounded and more relevant to what you're working on with Azure and that sort of thing. So
sweet. So there's a lot for people to look into. Definitely recommend getting started. And you're going to hear more from me about AIShell as the year goes on. But man, it's been cool. So you've been at Microsoft for, was it 3 or 4 years?
Almost 4 years now. Almost
Wow.
4 years. A few months till 4 years. So yeah.
And you're quite, usually whenever I do these podcasts, I kind of have to phrase things in a very, not necessarily a leading way, but a way that kind of makes it easier to answer. But I feel like I could just throw spaghetti on the wall and you're going to make something with it. So how's it been kind of growing? Because I think a lot of people, whenever they get into maybe these types of roles or at Microsoft, maybe they're not expecting to do as much public stuff as I guess now you're doing. But in State of the Shell, you were crushing it. You've been at it for a while. What's it been like?
I definitely didn't expect to be a regular podcast host for my job at Microsoft. But, I actually find it quite fun. I think for me, I gain a lot of energy and get a lot of excitement talking to the customers using our product. Not only does that help me become a better product manager, but it helps you guys communicate with us and help us figure out what we need to do next. And so, I always like to say I was a forced extrovert because, I definitely grew up more of an introvert. And so this is not very natural for me. It's very easy for me to just be like, I don't need to do any of this. I don't need to talk publicly or do this stuff. But I think I recognize a certain level of you got to push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit and find the things about it that are fun to you and bring you some of that excitement. So it's taken me a while. It's taken me a lot of practice to kind of get out there. And I've learned from the best. Some of the people on my team are some of the best public speakers I know. Jason Helmick, Sydney Smith, Michael Green, all these pros have been real role models to me. And so I can't say I did it on my own by any means.
For sure. Yeah, we all are helped by the people before us. Mm-hmm. Sydney, to me, she's kind of reached legend status. And I think you've also kind of paved your way, and I think you're on your way. And it's fun to see because some of us, I've been in PowerShell for a while, but some people have been even, 19 years. They've been kind of dabbling with things. And to kind of see the faces, I think it's very helpful for those who are using PowerShell and consuming it all the time to get to meet some of the faces behind PowerShell. So Thank you, Steven.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to talk to 2 more engineers here. So Steven, you got to move. Anam.
All right, I'm out of here.
Thank you so much.
Pass my mic along, and thanks for having me.
Yes, for sure, man.
Cool.
All right. So Anam,
hi.
Introduce yourself to the audience if you could.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Anam. I am a software engineer on the PowerShell team. I work on PSResourceGet, PowerShell Gallery, and security. You might also recognize my name from previous GitHub posts on the PowerShell Docker repo. So I was a bit involved with that too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast. I was just talking to Steven, as you heard. You're just right across the street, right across the room. But so what's it? I think you're a little bit, there's more expectation. You're going to have to speak publicly and interact and roadmap, that kind of thing. But is this your first PowerShell conference?
Yeah, it's my first PowerShell conference. It's honestly my first time in Europe. So great spot, great occasion to start that on. Yeah, there was like a PowerShell mini conference in North Carolina that I went to briefly.
Oh, yes,
and
I was there
then,
as well. PowerShell Saturday.
oh, no way. Oh my gosh, I can't
Yeah.
believe I didn't meet you then. Yeah, and then I also did a bit of public speaking in college, like presenting research and stuff. So, but it's great to kind of get back into it and talk about the stuff that I do on a daily basis. And like, I worked on it so long or not, I guess, super long, but like I worked on it so long where I'm passionate about the stuff that we're doing. And I'm like, well, I can see how like this change was needed, or like this is really going to push us in the direction we want to go. So it's cool to come here and talk to people who have those needs or those wants and kind of see how they're taking it, but also how we can help them with what we're providing too. Yeah.
Yeah, now getting to kind of be amongst the people who are using the code you've written, that's gotta feel cool to, I mean, I guess you heard whenever Steven was talking about, oh, these PowerShells billions of times and all this. What's that feel like to like have written code that's being used by so many people?
It's mind-blowing. It's like hard to fathom that sometimes, but it's so true. Like there are people who are using certain modules that are out there that others have published, or there are people who are trying to find ways to like distribute their packages, and the tools that we create kind of help them do that. And it's cool to see how they've kind of taken that and then grown that or adapted that to their scenario. I think what's that saying? Like necessity is like the cause for innovation, you know. And there's so many people out there who are like, well, we've kind of needed this, so here I've gone and I've like invented my own, you know, module or tool, and it's cool to see like how they've kind of taken that and grown, and how we can kind of help in that space too.
So PSResourceGet. Can you speak to what PSResourceGet is for those who maybe haven't heard of it?
Yeah, PSResourceGet is a package manager tool for PowerShell. If you have heard of PowerShellGet, you've kind of used an older flavor of PSResourceGet. PSResourceGet is a rewrite. It has commands like install PSResource, find PSResource, a bunch of others. But what's neat about it is that it has better performance, support for more types of repositories, and we're actively developing it compared to PowerShellGet. So if you would like to see certain features or maybe bugs fixed, or there's a certain direction you'd like to see it grow in, we can kind of take that feedback and actually do something with that, and really drive that. And yeah, one of the cool things that I talked about at the conference this week was we've added support for container registry repositories. So if you would like a private repository just for yourself and for your packages to reside, and you can control who has access to it and who shouldn't, container registries are definitely the way to go. One of the other cool feedbacks that I saw in the conference was sometimes people get a little frustrated, understandably, with the NuGet server. So PowerShell Gallery kind of is based on that concept, and so is NuGet Gallery. And there's a lot of peculiarities, I think, with that. That comes with the design. But with container registries, you don't have to worry about that. It's all container server based. So kind of a cool, different way of thinking about where you can store your packages. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is the MAR?
Yeah, MAR is Microsoft's container registry. So it's kind of how they've done it. And it's a official and trusted feed for all your Microsoft images and artifacts. And we kind of took the concept of an artifact being able to store any type of file and said, well, we can store PowerShell resources, aka NupKeg files in there. So any of your favorite PowerShell modules like the AZ module or Microsoft Graph can also now, you know, get published to MAR. So if you're consuming those and you want to know with the peace of mind that's coming from Microsoft, you can just go to their repository, MAR, and pull it from there and know that, boo, I'm getting the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does it stand for?
Oh, yeah, shoot, yeah. That's how you know that I've been working with it too long, where I just, the abbreviation is second nature to me. Yeah, MAR stands for Microsoft's Artifact Registry. Yeah, and they have, the other thing I should mention is that it's a public feed, so you don't need any authentication to connect to it. You do not need an Azure account to connect to it. You can connect to it just like you would the PowerShell Gallery for free, and you can pull and consume packages from it. So really easy to onboard to and really easy to use, but with the added trust, which is awesome.
If you had to pick one core challenge people that PSResourceGet addresses, what would that be?
Yeah.
I know there's multiple, but.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the core challenges we saw was that obviously people want fast installations, you know. That's kind of the nature when you're downloading big packages, especially ones that have a lot of dependencies. And I think with PowerShellGet, obviously we're doing the best we could, but sometimes installation was a bit slow, or maybe it was making some slightly unnecessary calls. So we've tried to optimize that in PSResourceGet. And we're also obviously still working on that. So some cool work that we're going to have coming up is we're going to have a cache so that installations are way faster. We're also working on parallel installations. So, if a package is being installed and it's got 10 dependencies or something, that can happen in parallel and be way faster. So I think one of the neat things about PSResourceGet is we can kind of offer that optimization and keep working on it to improve it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the support for V3, I think, was helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that was another thing too, where now we can support NuGet.org or NuGet Gallery, as it's called, and get packages from there. We allow you to publish packages to there, which I think was a bit harder to do with PowerShellGet v2. And then other package feeds, like if you have a GitHub package repository or an ADO feed or Artifactory, we've kind of been adding support, and I think it's easier to do with PowerShellGet or with PSResourceGet to add repositories of that type. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big, PowerShell Gallery is awesome, but I'm a big fan if you're actually going to be using these in a work context. You need to be internalizing things. Trusting any open repository like that is not the best practice for work things. So it's cool that there's some more support on that end for different repositories.
Oh yeah, definitely. And PowerShell Gallery is an untrusted repository. It's public, like we've said, so anyone can consume packages from it. Anyone can publish packages to it. And I think the intent with which it was first created was kind of for that. So anybody in the community can, quickly create some functionality. They can package it into a module or a script, and boom, they can share it. And now their colleagues or their friends have gotten it. They can play around with it, and basically you can see what's happening in the PowerShell world and quickly, test the water with it. But it quickly grew into a wild west of packages. So now we have enterprise packages on there. We have community packages. We have about 14,000 packages at the moment. So it's huge. And I think sometimes people maybe are relying on it in the workplace, and we have to remind them it's not a trusted feed. You should kind of set up your own private one, especially if you want, additional trust. Otherwise, you have to kind of go out there to PowerShell Gallery and vet the ones that you're consuming. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And you were at PowerShell Saturday, Raleigh.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't meet you there. Yeah.
I know. It was busy.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a lot of people, I'm I do my best, but I get kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But are you in that area?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina. So it was right down the street from me, and I was like, I've got to go. And I got to meet Sean Wheeler over there.
I love Sean Wheeler. Huge fan of Sean.
Yeah.
Shout out, Sean.
I think that's one of the interesting things about working remote, which, now everything mostly is remote. There are a lot of people who I've met over Teams a bajillion times, and then to meet them in person, I'm like, wow, it's kind of crazy. So that's how I felt meeting Sean for sure. Yeah.
So be real with us. It's okay. The pro talk's over. Whenever Steven was like, hey, so we want to do a podcast tomorrow. What was your initial reaction? Were you like, oh my gosh, are you nervous?
It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool. I think of podcasts sometimes as here's a group of people who are discussing my favorite thing, whether it's a show or a book or sometimes even crime podcasts, where I'm like, this is great to tap into, right? So I was like, hey, that's cool that we have a PowerShell podcast. We have people who want to tune in and listen to what's happening, which is neat. I know in my job, I don't always do a whole lot of public speaking, but it's a cool opportunity to do so. And it's been so nice and chill so far. Plus, any occasion to see Steven speak more is a fun one, Yeah. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, there you go. Bring him back in. I'm trying to sign him up for more presentations this week, as you can see. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's go hobby. So people they like learning about the people from the PowerShell team. What's a hobby you have? What's a little bit about you behind the coding?
Yeah, I love anything artsy, honestly. I think I've told this to a few people on the team, but if I wasn't an engineer, I would do something artsy. I would maybe have a job like that. But I like doing pottery, embroidery, painting. I also like swimming, hiking. Nice. I've been getting into biking a bit with my family. I also have a cat. So sometimes during work breaks, I'm like, where's my cat? I just need to unwind a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
The art thing is interesting because I'm curious. So you write a lot of code. I'm guessing a lot of C#. Whenever you're in your zone, you know how to code, you've been to school and all that stuff. Does it feel artistic to you when you're kind of in
honestly.
the zone?
I think that's one of the things I like best about coding is that like there's so many different ways to reach a solution, and there's no one right answer, which to me is kind of like the beauty of art too. There's so many things to do. There's so many ways to do one thing, and each way is beautiful in its own way. And then you're kind of picking, once you get to like an initial draft or whatever you're creating in art, you can kind of fine tune it a bit more. And code is kind of like that too, which is exciting to see. I also did a lot of education-based work maybe in college. And one of the things I liked there was like you can kind of share what you're learning and like have an impact. And it's easy to see that with code too, especially like in the open source community where, the stuff we create, we can immediately see the impact because we're working with those people. We're getting that feedback in real time. So that is really cool too, because I'm like, wow, it's a constant feedback loop. It keeps you going. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, I ask you questions that maybe are more like PM oriented, like understanding the context around it, being able to speak to it. You're not just writing the code like, hey, crossing off the box.
Yeah.
Here's what I need to do.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, what time in the week do you spend writing code versus kind of planning or talking with other people who maybe aren't writing code?
Yeah. I feel like usually the start of the week is kind of spent chatting with people, so to say. So we're like replying to issues. We're seeing what's on the discussion posts. We're seeing how what we're doing is getting received and where we need to grow it and take it, I think. And that's cool to do. Also, obviously, chatting with teammates. But yeah, I really think that's one of the neat things of open source where the work I'm doing is not in a silo. I can see its impact. And I think one thing that's great about the open source community is if you're doing something and it's not hitting the way it needs to, people will tell you. And that's great to see too. Yeah, and then I'd say like the middle of my week is usually spent writing code. And sometimes, once a month we have our community call on Thursdays. So that's also a great way to check in and chat with people. So there's usually a good balance. Yeah.
Now, PSResourceGet, is that open source?
Yeah, it's open source. Check us out on GitHub. And if there's any features or support you'd like to see, please let us know. If you get to check out container registries and, spin up one of your own, or you connect to Microsoft's one for free, we would love feedback, especially as we're trying to drive up adoption. I think the feedback right now is so integral to dictating kind of where we take it and what we need to improve and work on. Yeah.
So open up issues.
Yeah, please. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
What I'd say is open up issues and know that there's a human behind it. So I haven't seen too many unkind ones. Just be kind.
Yeah.
Everyone, I mean, I'm sure that you'd love every single feature to be there right out of the gate, but it's just, there's limitations in life and time and things like that. Last question. So you're coding. Are you like, all right, I'm going to book off 4 hours and go deep? Or are you like more, all right, here's 30 minutes I got. Let's code.
Yeah. I think that's such a interesting part of programming where you're trying to do a bunch of different tasks. You're trying not to context switch too much, but you're also trying to get in the zone and really, it's when you get in that zone that you're really like, wow, being inspired. Exactly. Yeah. I was like trying to find a more professional word to say on your podcast, that's really the one. Yeah. You're in the zone and you're like, oh my gosh, I've stumbled upon something. So I'll try to like work maybe a solid hour and then see if I need to context switch to something else and, work on a different task. And that gives me enough time to like really lock in, but not get distracted too soon. And sometimes what I find really useful is if I'm working on something and I'm so stuck, I'll just go for a walk or I'll be like, where's my cat?
Smart.
And then I come back with like a fresh mind and I'm like, wow, the bug's right there, So I'd say, I guess to any programmers out there, give yourself a break. Don't, fear switching and giving your mind a little break and then come back to it. And you can see that sometimes it does wonders.
What's your coding environment? What IDE are you using?
I use VS Code, so maybe a bit classic there. And I use the dark mode. I will say for the conference, we turned it on to light mode, so the demos were easy to see. And I was like, this is so foreign to me. But I like that. And then obviously the PowerShell terminal when I'm running stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you? I got to ask that back now. Hold
VS Code.
Code.
I'm on as you can see, a MacBook, but so I use a lot of iTerm too.
Yeah.
Now AIShell sidecars. So
I got to check that out. Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Big stuff coming there.
Well, thank you for joining me. I'll have some links to the repos and maybe some of your social handles if you're more public.
Yeah. I would love that. All right. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
All right, Tess, welcome to the PowerShell podcast. You were just watching a couple interviews from the side, hopefully not getting more nervous, hopefully getting less nervous. But
no, it's great. I've got to see the pros go before me, and now I can just repeat what they did.
Awesome. Well, Tess, so can you introduce yourself? You were a programmer at Microsoft. What kind of stuff are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm on the PowerShell and OpenSSH team. I primarily maintain OpenSSH for Windows and also spend a little bit of time working on DSC v3. So I kind of go between C and Rust for my primary languages.
Nice. Yeah, SSH has really grown, I guess, at least in the Windows world in the past, I don't know how long, 5+ years or so?
Yeah, definitely. I've been at Microsoft for about 4 years, and it started before my time, but it's been really great to see that adoption, and our goal is to make it the default remoting protocol for Windows.
Yeah, because I think it has been the default protocol for other places, but not so much Windows.
Right.
And I guess unifying that kind of saves a lot of efforts. But so in the day-to-day, are you mostly working on which repository are you kind of plugging away at?
It depends. Upstream for OpenSSH is constantly making changes. So depending on, their release cadence affects when we pull in those changes. But right now I've been spending more time on DSC and getting that ready for RC. So that's been cool to switch to work on a little bit.
Yeah, so DSC, I think maybe some people out there are familiar with DSC v2, but v3 is kind of a bit different in some ways, right?
Yeah, definitely. V3 is going to be decoupled from PowerShell, so it can be run cross-platform and it's native so that you do not need PowerShell on that device. And hopefully it will broaden some usage and expand the use cases. And we can also author resources in any language now. So there's going to be some development resources on getting started in whatever language you're comfortable in. And config files can be authored in JSON, YAML, or even Bicep. So some good things coming there.
So DSC, what does it generally do for those who've never used it or don't know where to slot it in their mind? Like a high level, what is DSC?
Yeah, DSC is described to me as configuration as code. So it's a declarative platform that allows you to manage applications, services, and machines overall. That's kind of hard to wrap your mind around when you come from coding and you're used to sort of making a description of how to do something and have it do that. And then you kind of have to flip your perspective and say what you want. And DSC is that platform that allows you to specify what you want. And then it's really the underlying resources that are doing it.
Okay, so you kind of maybe have a file that defines what a server would look like. And then DSC is responsible for taking that and then applying it and doing the magic in the background.
Yeah, it can, if you've got your dev box set up for whatever project you're working on and you want someone else to be able to become a developer on that project as well, you can sort of export your settings and then apply it to a different machine and they can get up and running.
So pretty important to do, especially if you're working at scale.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know of another way that you would kind of go about that, especially these days. I think the as code thing has been around for a while, and the DSC is a pretty awesome implementation of that. Very excited to see V3. I'm friends with Mikey Lombardi, who's very passionate about that as well. So seeing it develop over the years has been very fun. When you, so is this like just Windows?
No, DSC is cross-platform, so not just Windows, Linux, Mac. Yeah.
So how would you compare something like DSC with like Azure Bicep?
That's a great question.
Are they different? Are they overlapped?
So I'm less familiar with Bicep, but there is an experimental feature in Bicep to allow you to author DSC, and that will allow you to sort of generate your config there and then turn that into a JSON that can be processed by DSC. So there will definitely be developments in the Azure space for utilizing DSC there.
Was it called PowerShell DSC or was it always just DSC?
I think V2 was PSDSC. I'm looking at Steven.
I don't know either.
Before either of our time,
Yeah.
At Microsoft, so not sure.
Not sure. But the V3 is just called DSC, or Desired State Configuration.
Yes.
Awesome. And that's got to be a little interesting. I guess these days things are a lot more connected in the Microsoft world in terms of like cross-platform. You don't have to only be on Windows, but yeah, it's been a bit of a paradigm shift over the last several years where I think people who aren't maybe plugged into the Microsoft world think things are still segmented, like they're not with the whole open source and Microsoft being a thing, which is, I mean, what was your impression like going into Microsoft? Was it already like open source was a thing? Did you already know that they were doing open source work?
No, I really did not. And, going into it, we don't necessarily know what team we're interviewing for and stuff like that. So it was kind of really just serendipitous to be placed on a team that does primarily open source and learn about all the work that Microsoft does in that area and really have a chance to contribute there. And I think that's one of the really cool things about our team.
Yeah, and you said SSH being the go-to kind of remoting protocol. What's up with Server 25 and SSH? Is there anything there?
Yeah, so Server 2025 has the SSH server installed by default for the first time. So on older Windows versions, the SSH client is there as a feature on demand already. And now with Windows Server 2025, the SSH server is also there. So it makes getting started even easier, especially for those sort of offline scenarios where you might not be able to access Windows feature on demand and be able to get that optional feature installed. So kind of taking away some of that manual process of mounting an ISO and getting that cab file installed. Instead, it's just in the server manager UI to sort of toggle it to enabled, and you're starting the service and ready to go.
Sweet. So Server 25 SSH, you said client, there's also a server. What's the difference between client and server if people aren't familiar?
So you mean like the SSH client server?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, not a Windows server.
Yeah. So the SSH client is for making the connection from your machine to the remote target. And the remote target has to have the SSH server running on it
To
to
accept
be
the
able.
requests and do all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is SSH client on Windows, like Windows 11, Windows 10 devices?
It is. And client or server, so even your Windows 11 device will have the SSH client installed by default, so you can use it right away.
Cool. And now, so SSH, you said upstream. So there's like kind of different flavors, or what's the difference between the SSH you work on versus the upstream?
Yeah, so we are downstream of OpenBSD's OpenSSH portable repository, and we have a compatibility layer for Windows. So they are focused on non-Windows platforms, and we just have changes in our fork to make it also run on Windows. So there is some features that aren't implemented for Windows yet, but we do try to have parity with Upstream.
And Heiss, I got to meet him this week. He's apparently a huge advocate, and he wrote like the DSC handbook or something like that, some kind of thing to help people get up to date with it. I'm actually do a podcast with him, a full-length one, to give people sort of a primer in DSC and maybe increase some adoption in there and get people ready for that. But so there's like other providers now. You mentioned something about Python.
Yes. So Heiss has done a lot of work on implementing a Python resource for DSC. And ultimately, the goal with Python resources is that there will be an adapter similar to how PowerShell resources are implemented for DSC v3. So that will enable any Python developers to sort of use that adapter to interface with their resources. And hopefully there will also be some sort of scaffolding that will sort of have the baseline configuration that's needed for DSC already provided. And then you can sort of build your resource on top of that class and be able to configure your resource for DSC very easily.
And what is a resource in this context?
Yeah, so a DSC resource is whatever capability you want to be able to configure with DSC. So for example, there is the OS info resource or process info for getting information about the services running on your machine. We are also, to sort of combine the SSH and DSC worlds, hoping to create a SSH deconfig resource, and that would be able to get information about your SSH server settings and be able to configure those settings through DSC as well.
Awesome. So a lot of cool stuff happening there. It's been so much fun to see the tooling that we have available to us improve over time. Obviously, things like VS Code and AI is obviously really helpful, but it's kind of wild to live in this time where the tools just kind of keep getting better, and you're partially responsible for that. So thank you so much for that. But I want to go, so I think that's the work stuff. All right. Let's hear about the personal side of things. So, like, what are your hobbies? What are you into outside of writing code?
Yeah, basically anything that's not sitting at a desk. So I like to keep moving. I'm a runner. I play soccer,
Nice.
softball, pickleball, tennis.
Pickleball. Okay. Oh, don't get
Yeah,
me
I've
started.
jumped on that bandwagon. I don't even live in Seattle, so.
Oh, gosh, me too. Are you like just playing for fun? Are you doing tournaments yet, or where are you?
I'm not in the tournament journey yet, but yeah, just fun rec leagues.
I like it because it's very social too. Like whenever you're playing pickleball, you're so close. You
Yeah.
just can chit chat and talk smack between points or be nice to each other, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you got to be careful though. I've seen some nasty pickleball injuries.
Oh,
so
yes, I
even though
have
it's
too.
social, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely nerdy goggled up. I'm not taking chances. But where do you live? So you're not in North Carolina.
I'm not. I live in Boston. I was previously out of the Atlanta office.
Yeah, I
but
saw you had a
recently-
Microsoft ATL shirt on.
Yes. Yeah, I recently relocated to Boston. My family's from the New England area, so the flexibility in working remotely has been really nice.
Nice. So whenever it comes to coding, you're in VS Code, or what are you using? What's your IDE?
It depends. I mean, for OpenSSH, I'm in Visual Studio, but for DSC, I'm in VS Code.
Nice. Any go-to extensions in VS Code?
The PowerShell extension. And, I mean, for Rust, there's the Rust Analyzer, which is very helpful. I've recently started using Prompt Boost, which one of my mentors at Microsoft told me about. But if you're using GitHub CoPilot, it can basically take any prompt that you're going to give it and
I'm writing that down.
basically provide more context to it automatically. And you can sort of save it in a CoPilot prompt file or just have it generate it automatically. But yeah, that's been cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. My pro tip that I discovered that I give people for AI is like use AI to kind of come up with the prompt that you want
Yes,
to use. It can
that's
be a little
exactly
more
what
full
it's doing.
featured. So
Yeah.
nice. So it kind of does that without me having to use an extra window. So
Yep.
Prompt Boost, we'll check that out. So you've been in Malmo for a few days now. Any memorable things from the city you've experienced? I really like the architecture for
Yeah.
me and a lot of cool sculptures around where we are. But anything you've seen that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. We've loved biking around a little bit. Everyone who has come to PSConfEU before was like, you have to go on the bike ride. And so,
How was that?
yeah, we got 2 miles into it before a major storm rolled through. So we got a little wet, but it was a
Free
memorable
shower.
time.
Yeah.
Got soaked. It was
Yeah, I saw Steven come
tsunami.
in. Everyone who came in literally looked like they just got out of the shower and did not towel off.
I don't even think my jean jacket has dried, and it was 2 days ago.
Oh, awesome. And I'll include some links to your projects and maybe your social media handles if you'd like to share those. But thank you for joining us. An audience, Tess,
Thank you for
Steven's
having me.
over
This is
there.
awesome.
Anam.
Hey, yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you everybody for listening. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. We are worldwide. That's what's up. Oh my gosh, you got the
What's
whole
the-
gang here.
Oh, it's the left and then the.
Okay.
This is one of the
There we
main
go.
prompt. I've been teaching everyone the PowerShell gang sign.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's our new fraternity.
For the thumbnail or something.
Yeah.
Yes. New episodes every single Monday. Check us out. Keep using PowerShell. Try and get a little bit better every day. And take care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Most of you know the PowerShell podcast is sponsored and made possible by PDQ. I've had questions from listeners asking, what's PDQ and what do you do? Well, we help IT teams automate endpoint management. PDQ Connect is our cloud-based tool for real-time software deployment, patching, scripting, remote access, and vulnerability management. It's fast, flexible, and built for people who just want things to work. If you want to see it in action, head to pdq.com/podcast and check out our interactive demo. No signups, no emails, no credit card, just a fast and easy way to explore how it works. That's pdq.com/podcast. Automated endpoint management that doesn't slow you down.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.